Hello! Today I want to give you a quick review, my first review of Mountains of the Moon by I.J.Kay, and also ask you all what your opinions are on first-person child narrators, which is an important part of this book as well, so I thought that was fitting. The plot of Mountains of the Moon is not easy to describe. Obviously I'll give it a go, but it's written in a very fragmented manner, which makes sense. It follows our main narrator, Louise, when she's in her early 30s, just after she's been released from prison. But it also follows her as I want to say, around the age of 10 and older, when she's called Lulu, and also in her early 20s, when she's referred to as Kim. So we have Louise, Kim, and Lulu at sort of 10 years intervals. And the book isn't written chronologically. We have to understand as a reader who we are following at what time. On the one hand, that is quite easy because the plot points are different at different ages, but the voice of the narrator is also a different one. Lulu at the age of 10 has very poor grammar. She's not, however, unintelligent or unimaginative or anything like that. She actually writes a story, Mountains of the Moon, as a child in class, which her teacher reads out to the class, correcting the grammar mistakes because she doesn't want to embarrass the young girl. She actually wants to encourage her fantasy and her creativity, which is very nice. It's also one of the rare moments where a person on the whole is nice to this young girl, because she grows up with a very troubled family life, which then sets the stage for her development as a 20-odd-year-old and the friendships she makes, and gives us an idea or maybe a feel for why, as a 30-year-old, she's released from prison. Something bad must have happened in her past. On the one hand, we follow this mystery of why was she in prison, but we also just get to understand why she is the woman she is now, what happened, how the relationships shaped where she went in life. The book tries to help us out with keeping track of all the different characters by having a cast list in the beginning of the book, where the different names are almost explained, because the young girl will call people differently than the older girl, and to keep track of that, this list is supposed to help us out. I personally skimmed it and found that it didn't help me too much, because it's right at the beginning, and somewhere in the middle of the book I didn't tend to go back because that confused me even more. I sort of just wanted to enjoy the ride a bit. The book's also divided into 3 acts, and it has a sort of overture, prologue bit, and it has a final and reprise. So even though I thought that was a sort of unusual, nice twist to a book, after having read it, I'm really struggling with whether this book is actually more smoke and mirrors if you break it down. Because I had to think about it for a long time. I wanted to make sure that I had understood everything correctly, that I understood different parts, because different parts are so fragmented, hallucinatory almost, that afterwards you're not quite sure what you read. And I wanted to piece all the parts together to make sure that I had the proper, correct story down at the end. And I feel quite confident that I have it down now, but I'm not sure how rewarding that feeling is, because in the end, I think the story is pretty simple. It was just difficult to get to. And that's also why I just really want other people to read it. Not because it is the most amazing book I've read this year. I think on Goodreads, I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, because I'm quite unsure about some parts. But I just really want other people to read it, so they can tell me what they thought, what they made out of it. I read some reviews afterwards, trying to somehow gauge what my opinion was on it. And it was really interesting, because I came upon reviews that mentioned certain characters really positively, and those were the ones that I found the creepiest, and vice versa. There are some hard, tough scenes in this book. There's some domestic violence, there's some psychological abuse, which I personally found more difficult to read about. So you should be aware of that. But I didn't feel like that was ever unnecessary. I did feel like we need to read about what happens to this woman at different stages in her life and how horrible the things were that she's gone through and how vicious the people were that she met to understand the person she is in the end. I thought that was one of the most interesting takeaway messages of the book, that you are the result of all the experience that have shaped you. So I didn't think it was a depressing read, but it was difficult to get through at times. It was a book that I read in parallel with others because sometimes I wanted to pick me up, and this book is never a positive, enlightening book. So I'm not quite sure if I liked it. I thought it was definitely an interesting, different read. Although, and that's where I come to my question previously about child narrators. I found the grammatically incorrect 10-year-old Lulu very interesting, but I'm unsure whether that actually carried enough interest for the whole book. And I think on the whole, I don't enjoy child narrators that much. I can appreciate the point of seeing something through the eyes of someone who hasn't experienced everything, who sees something in a very pure way. So I was thinking about different books that I read in the past that also have child narrators. I could think of two that I enjoyed. On the one hand, there's I always mix this up, The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, by Mark Haddon, which is written from the perspective of a 15-year-old boy who tries to, in Sherlock Holmes manner, find out who killed or what killed the neighbour's dog. And even though it's never clearly stated in the book, the boy, as a reader, you presume has a form of Asperger's syndrome or some form of high-functioning autism. And that was also the aspect that I found really interesting. He really describes things how they are. The fact that the dog is dead, for him, is not a crushing, sad experience emotionally. He finds it rationally sad and wrong and wants to find out who did this, because that person then has to be punished. So the fact that he has a very special, distinct way of thinking about things and clearing up this mystery, that was more interesting to me than the fact that he was 15. And also because he is made to be a very intelligent 15-year-old, he doesn't have a super simplified child's voice. So I think that was the reason I liked that book. The other book I could think of was Pigeon English by Stephen Kelman, about a 11-year-old boy and his family that immigrate to London from Ghana. And as the title suggests, Pigeon English, he has words that he uses, funny sentence structures, because of him adapting slowly to the sort of UK English. And that, again, I found interesting. I struggled more with this book because I felt like this book did have some of the child narrator tropes that I find a little bit annoying, to be honest. Everything's quite simplified. In that book, he also tries to find out who killed a boy from his school, I think. Him and his best friend go investigate, which that's a bit macabre that there's the parallel between those two books. I've only just realised. Again, horrible things that happen to this immigrant family in a sort of not well off block of flats in London. All these traumatic experiences are simplified from the point of view of an 11-year-old. And I then feel like the book is more nuanced when the narrator actually has a bit more insight. So I'd really like to know how you feel on the topic of first-person child narrators. Can you think of books where you feel like, yes, you do have the interesting experience of reading something from the point of view of a person much younger than you, but it's not tedious or too easy. Mountains of the Moon definitely isn't too easy. You do really have to stay focused and piece together the parts. So I don't think this one suffers from the first person child narrator problem of being too simple. It isn't. So let me know what you think. Maybe one of you has even read Mountains of the Moon and can tell me what they thought of the character Anton and the living situation that the main character has going on with him. Because I thought that was super creepy, but I've also read reviews that said they thought that was a really warm and nice relationship. Yeah, I will be back with another video soon. I hope you're all having a really nice day. Tschüss!